Pebbles off the tube and welcome back to Oh My Dinosaur Story Corner Week.
Oh My Dinosaur Story Corner
Week. So if you haven't seen the last 3 videos, I recommend that you go back and catch up because this is part 4 of 5 of an ongoing story. We're reading it in chunks across the week. Here is yesterday's episode. All the episodes are linked in order in the description. But yeah, we're now on to chapter 4 of The Mansion of Strange Shadows. This chapter is called Out of Time. Alex's footsteps echoed behind her in the narrow corridor. She stopped suddenly, holding her breath and listening. The only sound was her beating heart. But she still had the feeling that something was following her, even if there was nothing in the corridors with her but shadows. She looked back. The picture gallery seemed a mile away and it felt like she'd checked at least 100 rooms. Would she ever find Kat? Maybe she found her way back to the class, Alex muttered, though knowing Kat's habit of landing herself in hot water it seemed unlikely. As long as Lara doesn't go wandering off as well, I don't have time to go searching for 2 of them. Sighing, she turned the handle on another creaking door and peered inside. Instead of just another dark and dusty room, she found a winding set of iron stairs that appeared to lead up to some sort of tower room. Kat wouldn't go up there, surely? Alex asked herself before groaning. Actually, that's exactly the kind of place Kat would explore, curse or no curse. She called softly, "Hello?" When a quiet voice answered, Alex asked, "Who's that?" The voice answered again. Alex couldn't be sure if it was replying, "It's Kat," or if it was just an echo of her own question. But she didn't want to spend the rest of the day having a conversation with herself, and it would be quicker and easier to go up and check. The stairs creaked loudly with each step, and Alex made sure she was treading very carefully. She could imagine the whole staircase falling apart and crashing to the floor, taking her with it. Suddenly she felt dizzy. I know that feeling. She grabbed the grimy railing to stop herself from falling and took a deep breath. Everything seemed to spin and shadows twisted around her. It was easy to believe the house had been cursed by a mad lord. Everything about the place made her uneasy. It was like walking through a graveyard at midnight. "Stop creeping yourself out," she shivered, climbing the stairs into the room above. Huge cogs, gears and levers surrounded her and light shone weakly through the frosted glass of the massive clock face. This had to be the clock tower she'd noticed as they'd arrived that morning. Cobwebs hung like curtains over the clock mechanism. It obviously hadn't worked in years, maybe even centuries. It was also obvious that Kat wasn't in the tower. All that effort for a stupid echo, Alex groaned. What a waste of time. Then she spotted something sticking out from among the cogs. A carved metal sun glinted at her. "It looks like those carvings on that weird door in the cellar," she realised. She had to stretch quite far to reach the sun symbol, and when she managed to get a grip on it, she had to tug hard to shift it. With a screech of metal, it came free in Alex's hand. Then there was another screech, from Alex this time, when the giant cog suddenly shifted around her. The metal sun had been blocking the gears, and now it had been removed, the clock had sprung into life. Alex managed to move out of the way, but found herself being jerked back. "My scarf!" she gasped. The trailing end was caught between 2 cogs, dragging her forward. Choking, she scrambled to loosen the knot, tightening at her throat. Gasping for air, she freed herself and jumped backwards, just as her scarf was dragged in and chewed up by the machinery. "That was nearly me," she gulped, backing away as the wheels and gears spun faster and faster, driving the clock hands round and round from 12 to 11 to 10, till they were just a blur. "Why is it going backwards?" she wondered. "Everything about this house is crazy, but I'm not crazy enough to stay here." She raced down the spiral staircase and out into the corridor. The door closed silently behind her, and it took her a second or two to realise that the corridor was different somehow. The thick dust was missing and lamps glowed gently on the walls. She ducked back into the doorway, glad that it had lost its loud creak, when she heard voices echoing along the corridor towards her. 2 grey figures glided into view and Alex gasped. She could see the walls through them, as if the figures were made of smoke. "Ghosts!" she whispered. "The house is haunted after all." It wasn't until the figures passed by her that she realised, horrified, that she recognised them. "Kat! Lara!" she yelled, rushing into the corridor after them. The two figures drifted on. She could hear their voices, distant and whispering like an echo. They were saying something about a star and a moon, and Alex stopped and glanced at the sun symbol in her hand. She had seen something like it before, but she was too panicked to figure out where. Instead, she cried out again, "Kat! Lara, it's me!" Her phantom friends stopped and turned with puzzled looks on their faces. Kat was whispering something, but Lara only shook her head, and the two turned to walk away. Couldn't they see her? She raced in front of them, waving her hands and shouting, but the misty figures just kept walking. Worse than that, though, they were becoming more transparent until they vanished from sight. What had happened? Were they ghosts now? That would mean they were... No! Alex shook her head. She refused to believe their friends were dead. There had to be some other answer. She marched back through the maze of halls and corridors, but nothing was the way she remembered. Old, moth-eaten tapestries were clean and new. Rusty armour had become shiny again. Broken windows were no longer shattered, and abandoned rooms now had elegant antique furniture in them, polished and well upholstered. Occasionally, Alex would hear a sound, piano music or faint voices. She would catch fleeting glimpses of more ghostly forms, an Edwardian family who grew younger each time she spotted them, a Victorian parlour maid. The further she walked, the further back in time the ghosts came from. It was almost as if time were going backwards. Like the clock, Alex realised. Somehow the clock running backwards is dragging me back through time with it. When I saw Kat and Lara, they weren't ghosts from the past. They were phantoms from the future. She was racing now, down the massive staircase, through the hallway towards a cellar door. This had to be part of Lord Jonathan Nightshade's curse, and somehow she knew that the answer lay beyond that mysterious door which would be uncovered in the cellar. She ran through a swirling fog, glimpsing faces which formed and faded as the ghostly inhabitants of Nightshade Mansion sped backwards through their lives. Her journey back through the years was speeding up, but where or when was it leading her? An eerie glow filled the arched cellar chamber, glowing brighter as Alex descended the stone staircase, fluttering like candlelight. She was pressed against the cold walls, avoiding the light. Suddenly, the cellar door flew open behind her. A crowd of dark figures filled the doorway. They weren't phantoms, though, but living people, waving fiery torches and talking angrily. Alex cowered in the corner, out of sight of the angry mob. As they stormed past, she saw that they wore black tunics with long white collars, breeches, and three-cornered hats, and their leader wore a cloak which flowed behind him like bat wings. Witchfinders, Alex gasped. In history books in Shadeport High School's library, she had read about men who had roamed the land, tracking down people suspected of witchcraft, even though most of the people they put on trial and executed were innocent. The man who stood in the centre of the cellar, surrounded by 13 red candles, was certainly not innocent. Alex recognised him instantly from the forbidding statue which stood before the house. "Lord Jonathan Nightshade," snarled the leader of the mob, "you are guilty of using dark powers to spread your evil ways. This wickedness shall be punished." Here's a picture of old Johnny Nightshade. Quite a spooky guy. The 13th Lord of Nightshade Mansion laughed loudly as if the men who surrounded him were no threat at all. "Jeremiah Stark," he said to their leader, "you should not threaten me here. I am lord of this domain, and it is I who shall decide who is punished." "You are no longer lord here," announced a voice from the stairs. A tall, handsome man in fine clothes stepped into the light. "Your evil has shamed our family for many years, and now it is at an end." "Dear brother Anthony," Jonathan sneered, "so you would turn on me and bring these fools here? I thought as much. That is why I have prepared a surprise for you and all who will bear the name of Nightshade." Okay, now the next sentence, I think there's a line missing where it jumps paragraphs. So I'm going to extrapolate and work out what it says. This isn't verbatim what it says. This is just to let you know a slight amendment because there's a line missing. Alex held her breath, hardly daring to move in case the angry crowd saw her as a witch or spirit. In fact, she was so busy concentrating on not moving a muscle that it took her a moment to realise that she couldn't feel her muscles at all. It was as if her entire body no longer existed. That was when she looked down and saw that she was now as ghostly and transparent as the figures she had seen haunting the corridors. Even though time was now moving on around her normally once more, she was still trapped outside it somehow. Lord Jonathan was at the open trapdoor in the centre of the floor, its massive iron door thrown back to reveal a gaping black vault below. "The house of Nightshade and all who will dwell in it are cursed. There shall be no happiness in this house." The Witchfinder started to move forward, but Jonathan held his hands up and they were still. Around him floated 3 metal symbols, a star, a moon, and a sun. Alex looked at the outline of the symbol she held in her ghostly hand. It was the same sun. And who try to lift the curse shall be trapped, frozen in space, frozen in time, trapped outside time itself. The symbol spun faster, whizzing round him like comets until they burst away suddenly and shot off through the air. Jeremiah Stark and Anthony Nightshade ducked as the symbol soared past their heads and up the stairs. Alex could hear the clock far above chiming midnight and knew the sun symbol was soaring off above to trap itself amongst the gears, waiting for her to find it more than 300 years later. Lord Jonathan's hands passed above the candles, and the shadows they cast grew until they blotted out all the light in the cellar. From this day forward, my shadow shall be on this house. There was a massive clang of metal, and the light rushed back in time for the mob to see the carved trapdoor shut and seal itself. They scrambled forward to prise it open, but it was no use. It was Anthony who said, "Cover it over! Seal him down there forever in the darkness! Let this vault become his tomb!" Long hours later, and a new floor covered the secret door. The weary men slouched above the stairs before Alex slipped out of the shadows. She looked at the transparent sun symbol and hoped that her friends would find the other keys in their own time, for unless they could somehow lift the curse, she faced the rest of eternity trapped outside time, never growing old but never able to contact a living soul, as a powerless ghost. Bum bum bum. And so that's the end of chapter 4. Here's a picture of the sun symbol. So we've now found all 3 symbols, but Kat got trapped. She's now free. Lara nearly got trapped, but managed to escape and met up with Kat. But Alex, she's trapped out of time. What's going to happen? How will all this resolve itself? We'll find out in part 5 tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow. Join me then. I hope you do, because I'm excited to find out what happens. I don't actually remember. I remember the time running backwards because of the clock. I remember the paintings coming out of the paintings. I remember the bit trapped inside the snow globe really well. I have no memory of how the story ends. I hope it's satisfying. Come back tomorrow for the next episode, which is called The Vault of Shadows. Until then, though, thank you for watching and have a nice day.
Tell me a story, oh ho ho. It's not nearly Christmas, oh ho ho. It's a story, oh ho ho. I don't like this, oh ho ho. That is what Sewage said when he watched this. Oh ho ho.
I really hope you're enjoying these. I'm enjoying them a lot. Please do come back for next week's finale. It's a slightly longer one, but it's worth it, I think, just to hear the conclusion of the story. Just please come back. Just begging for views. Bye.
Oh ho ho.